So at this point, what you should have done is you should have watched the video about how to shade the back of your photograph and tape it down so that we can begin transferring and tracing your image onto your final piece of paper. Also available is, I would make sure that you take a look at the rubric. You're basically going to be graded on three things. You're going to be grading on your tracing, your color usage, and the paint. A majority of this project is how well you paint this. The tracing and the color part are also going to be part of it, but if you don't do well on the tracing and the colors, your project's not going to work. I mean, this is the bones of it. This is the beginnings. So you want to make sure that you get these two, like the tracing, done well, and then your colors, and with these two things, then your paintings are going to come pretty well. So with the tracing, which is the first step of this, the project successfully transferred the photo to the paper with a visible dark, light, and gray tones. The project has enclosed shapes. So those are the things that I really want you to pay attention to when I'm talking to you about this next part. Is you're looking for dark, light, and grays, and you're also making sure that the shapes you draw are enclosed. Think of it as like a coloring book. You have to be able to shade something in. A straight line does not work. For example, like this line is not something I can shade in. If I'm going to draw a line, I have to do this. That I can shade it in. You want to be having closed shapes, not just straight lines. Okay, so now let's talk about what you're going to be doing for tracing. This is a picture that one of my other students used for their project, and I printed it out. When the copy machine made this copy, it used just black ink and the white of the paper. That's it. It didn't use anything else. And the way that you got all of these different tones is by using more or less black ink. So, this down here, the inside of the sunglasses up here, it used all the black ink. It used as much black ink as it possibly could to get the color black. So that's the first tone that we're going to be paying attention to when we're doing this, is we're going to be looking for black or the darkest tones. All right? That's the first thing you're going to be tracing later on. So the second one is the gray tones. The gray tones are the places where the copy machine just used a little bit of ink. It didn't use all of it. It just used some of it to get gray tones. Now, the gray tones are tricky because they have the widest variety. Either something's black or it's white, but gray, there's a lot of different shades. If you look right here, like this little shape right here, this dark gray is darker than this gray over here, but you would consider both of these gray. Look down here. The gray over here is darker than the gray up here, but those are still gray. So gray can be a little bit more tricky, which is why we're going to save that one to the last. So the other one we're looking for is the white areas. So we're looking for the places where there was absolutely no ink used. So like this up here on his forehead. This right here, these right here on his nose. These areas are white. There is absolutely no ink used whatsoever. So when we're looking at this, we're going to trace in this order. You're going to trace the black areas, then you are going to trace the white areas, then you are going to trace the gray areas. Gray can be divided into two. It can be divided into light and dark gray if you want to, if you feel your project needs it. But you, at the very least, according to the rubric, you need to have dark areas, the white areas, and the gray areas. So you're going to need three tones. So let's look at this one. Let's divide it up into three tones. Just going this way, all right? Looking at it from this way, we're going to go, we've got dark right here. Here's black. Gray right here. And white. Okay, let's look at it from down here. You've got dark, gray, light. Dark, gray, light. So each one of these has their own little shapes to them. what you're going to be doing is you're going to be tracing these shapes, tracing the dark areas, tracing the light areas, tracing the gray areas, and then you're going to be filling them in with a color that is the exact same. So it's going to end up looking something like this. Instead of having black, gray, and white, what we're going to transfer these to eventually is it's going to be black, a gray version of that color, and then a light version of that color. So that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for these three tones so that eventually we can trace it in, we can color it in with paint, either black, the color, or the light version of that color. So you can see how this transforms into this. One of the other things that I want you to look for is, I mentioned it earlier, you have to have enclosed shapes. Don't just draw an eye and think that it looks like an eye. You have to actually draw a shape that you can fill in. So like this has to be a shape that you can eventually fill in. It's right there. Let's look at a few other examples. Here's another example that we're looking at. This one, you've got dark areas, gray areas, light areas. The eyes on this one are really tough because you've got a light area, you've got, I would say this is probably, I would consider this eyebrow dark area, dark, gray, gray. Like you've got different tones all inside the same one. Some of these might do you good to find different shades of gray. Like if I'm looking here at this shade of gray and this shade of gray, there's a little bit of a difference right there. There's a little bit of a difference between the gray over here and the gray over here. Again, you're just looking for dark, light, gray. So when this person filled it in, this is what it ended up looking like. Okay? You can see the difference between the two. This is the original one. That's what they ended up painting. All right? Notice how the dark areas are there, light areas. And you can change little things. Like, I look at this eye right here. This eye is different on here, but it still gets me an idea on what I was trying to go for. This one, they used different shades of gray. They actually used 4. So if you look on this one, they've got black, and then they've got dark gray, light gray, white. So that's an example of them having 4 instead of just 3. That's up to for you to decide. We've got one more I just wanted to show you, and that is this one. This one has a little bit more of a pixelized picture, but you can see again, dark, light, gray. All right? Dark, light, gray. All right? All those things are in there. So when they ended up painting this one, it ended up looking something like that. So you can see dark, light, gray. Right? All of those different areas are located inside of here. So this is what we're going to be doing. You are going to be tracing your picture and finding the dark, the light, and the gray areas. So now that we've identified how to look for light, dark, and gray areas, we're going to actually put this into practice. Now I would, if I were you, just over on the side of this, I would write, like I would go step 1, dark, step 2, light, step 3, gray. And then if you want to, you can divide that into dark and light gray. That's up to you. You don't have to do that last one. So let's start doing this. Okay, I'm going to look, and the first thing I want to do is I'm going to trace over anything that is black or close to it. So what I mean by close to it is like her eyes here are black. I might also make her eyebrows black because they're very close to it. The other thing that the other problem that people get into is they start to think what things should look like rather than what they actually do look like. The edge of her face here is blurred by her hair. You can't see the edge of her hair here. So this is all going to be one big black area. All of this. Don't start making things up, okay? If you start making up too much, it's not going to end up working. So I'm going to do this in fast motion here, but I want you to watch. I'm going to first trace over all of the dark areas. Okay, looking at this one, I would say I've pretty much gotten all the dark areas. So I can come up here and I can get rid of the dark. Now I want you to look here. At no point did I just draw a line. Oop, look at this, forgot. Get your eyebrow. Anyway, so what I mean by that is let's look at her eye here. When I drew her eye, I could have drawn the eye like this and done what I think an eye looks like and did that. But I can't fill that shape in. What I did is I actually just looked at what the black was here, and it comes like this, and then I have to loop back around, and that's what the eye actually looks like, because this I can't really shade any. I can maybe shade this part in, but I can't shade the rest of this. This I can shade all of this in with paint later. So this is the types of things we're looking for, as enclosed shapes, not just line drawings. So now that I've gotten the dark out of the way, let's do the light areas. There's a lot of them on here. So now I've come in here and I've gotten all of the light areas. I want you to notice something. There's a lot of hair here. There's a lot of like dark and light and gray areas. You don't have to get all of it as long as you're getting an idea. Let's go back and look at this one real quick. Look at her hair down here. All that little hair, all the little strands of hair inside all of this. And in the end, what they ended up doing was just this. They got these highlights right here. And they got the highlights over here on this side. But for the most part, some of the other stuff, they didn't even put it in there. You don't have to get all of that as long as you get an idea on where the highlights are and what things actually end up looking like. So now I've gotten light out of the way. So my dark areas, my light areas. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the hardest one, which is finding all of the gray areas. I can decide if I want to, I can look right here like I've got here dark gray and light gray. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do only a few places where there might be a light gray and dark gray. But otherwise, most of this is done. By doing the light and the dark, you've gotten everything done. The other thing that I want you to point out is this is your artwork. You can eliminate things if you don't want to draw them. For instance, I don't want to draw that necklace. That's going to be a pain for me. So I just eliminated it. I got the strap here, but I got rid of that. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw and I'm going to trace the gray areas if there's any that I need to. Okay, so now I think I'm done. If you notice, one of the things that I made sure I did is I outlined the entire side. Even though this is all light out here, we are going to distinguish later on from the background and the front. So you want to make sure that when you're doing this, you outline the person so that you know where they are, where the end of them starts and where the background begins. Also, I did have to make up a little bit. Over here, I couldn't really tell where her shoulder is, so I just came in and made it up. At this point, I'm done. So what I'm going to do is I've gotten the dark, the light, the gray done, and now I'm just going to pull this off. And now I have a transfer copy of what this looks like onto here. Now I'm able to go ahead and start painting it.